Welcome to Conversations with Mastermind Mentors by Coacharya, where leadership meets awareness, growth, and spiritual intelligence. Let's begin.
Hi, this is Ramanathan from Coacharya. In this particular session that we have as a part of a series of mentors whom we have known and fairly celebrated mentors who have been great corporate leaders as well, with many years of experience, some as mentors in the business spaces and some as coaches as well. We have two very eminent corporate leaders, RR Nair and R. Gopalakrishnan, both of them whom I had the privilege of working with in Hindustan Lever, and RR probably even earlier when I was with a company called Delhi Cloth Mills, where that was my first experience, industry experience, probably one of the oldest and the longest lasting mentors that I've had in my life at various points in time, who has intervened and helped me to find my path. And later years, Gopal, who had been my boss for several years in Levers and who had been amazingly helpful in helping me decide in many ways where I was in the process of not being able to make decisions, and I was working my way through. So in today's session, this is a pre-recorded session which would be broadcast at various points in time in different formats for discussions, for learning, and so on. We agreed, the three of us, this would be a fireside chat, as it were, me most of the time in the background, primarily between RR and Gopal. And this would have roughly three parts, as it were. The first, in terms of who were the people and the circumstances under which they were mentored themselves and which added value to them to be what they are today. And the second part would be over a period of time and the present moment as mentors, well-known, reputed, and coaches, the kind of experiences they've had and the values that they have added to other people and the learnings that they've had themselves, how it has sort of helped them develop and be in that space that they have been. And finally, as a last part, which is perhaps a bit of a crystal gazing, but at the same time could be of tremendous value to everybody who's listening in today as to what the future holds, given technological changes, the generational changes, the governance changes, and many other things that are happening around it. So I'll just pass it on now. And Gopal already said that he will follow RR's lead as the elder statesman in this group. We're all elders, but he's elder of the elder statesman. So if you would like to start with your own experience the last time that you really described so passionately in terms of those people who had mentored you, and after that Gopal can follow, and then we can go to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this conversation with Gopal and you, Ram. I just want to check whether my face is visible, because I can't see the faces because suddenly this meeting is being recorded and therefore there is a line that has cropped up. So I can't see both of you.
No, your face is visible, though it's a little bit, the light could have been better, but don't worry, we will try and see what best we can do to it.
I think the question that you were in a way asking is how have I evolved myself as a coach, as a mentor? I reflected over this since we talked about it last time, and there are a few that comes to my mind. And the first and foremost is early grounding and grooming in empathy. And to a large extent, my parents have been responsible. Listen to understand, show respect, and express gratitude. And in that whole process, try to feel into the shoes of other people. Not in these very flowery languages that you and I are very familiar to express, but those were the essence of the messaging that I picked up from my parents, and most notably my father. And of course, the initial mentors have had a profound influence in helping me to appreciate and understand human behavior. And as you know, my background has been in the field of psychology. And that led to a deeper understanding, even now as a student, of organization behavior, organization development, and both individual and group processes. A second major impactful experience I've had was the stage through which I went to become more aware of my own self-beliefs. A strong sense of positive self-belief that I acquired. And to a large extent, I attribute this to Dr. David McClelland, who came all the way from Harvard and spent almost 2 weeks in Srinagar in a laboratory session on trying to help us understand what are the key drivers and motives which influences our behaviors. And therefore, as you would appreciate, he is really the one who discovered the desire to excel, what he calls as the achievement drive. And later on in his life, he spent a lot of time trying to understand power motivation. So thanks to all of those experiences when I entered Hindustan Lever and now HEL, I really suddenly experienced that there is plenty of freedom for you to excel in whatever that one was doing. And I learned firsthand the power of change from within. And that, I think, to a large extent contributed by people like Dr. Ranjan Banerjee, the other behaviorist in our team, Tarun Sheth, who was senior to me. And I think that's a sort of a second important phase which propelled me and awakened me the coaching orientation that I have subsequently developed. The third one is I learned the art of facilitation and also how to influence people, especially by dealing with equally competitive and high achieving managers that we had in Levers. And therefore learned how to communicate truth with courage and without any hesitation. And I think that's something which seemed to have also contributed. If I may just add on a couple of more, the fourth one is the opportunity I had to work with senior leaders across the globe while being part of Unilever for a long time. And that provided me with insights on diverse cultures and diverse leadership skills and styles. And the last one, this is the later part of my life, post my Unilever days, HEL days, and we are going back in time, 2004, 2005. I did learn a lot, the benefit of industry and domain knowledge. And this is why I long stints on the statutory and advisory boards of various companies, both Indian and multinationals, and working very closely with some very, very powerful industry leaders also have contributed to my understanding of what businesses are all about, what is the nature of industry, and how do we set the context when we look at a CEO or a CXO in terms of a coaching relationship. And therefore, that facility and comfort that I derived as a result of this later part of my life experience, professional life experience, have been of immense value. And while coaching CEOs and CXOs across a variety of disciplines, it also helped me to speak their language. So my ability to connect with them and to influence them and to appreciate and understand the context from where they come from, I think all of this got enhanced. So Ram, if I were to really look at the early childhood, the parental early boss influences, then the concept of self and the concept of self-belief. How did I got in touch with my key motivations and drivers, which is the David McClelland story that I talked about, and how I felt quite liberated in a way when I joined HEL. Then the third one is the facilitation skills and the ability to influence. Equally powerful, if not even better, achievers than what I was. And that I think is the lucky opportunity that we have. All of us have enjoyed that because we often say that we don't work with colleagues in HEL, we work with friends because we, in fact, felt so connected with people. And the fourth one is the opportunity when I was in the later part of my life in Unilever, which took me to Arabia, which took me to the business group, having had the opportunity to work and coach board level senior management in many parts of Unilever. And that helped me to appreciate and understand cross cultural dynamics and diverse leadership styles. And the last one I talked about is the world outside of HUL and Unilever, which is the last 15 years of the experiences, both in statutory and also in advisory board, the opportunity to work with some very outstanding industry leaders, and also the wherewithal in appreciating and understanding the context of the businesses outside of FMCG, because I seem to be probably more well versed with the complexities and challenges and growth opportunities of businesses outside of FMCG now. And that helped me to sort of use languages which help me to connect with potential CEOs and CXOs as I was concentrating on that segment of levels of senior leadership for coaching. So let me just pause for a moment. I might have taken a little longer to explain what I've been through.
Not at all, RR.
Anand, that's very interesting that you have narrated it from the point of view of how the coach learned to coach. Starting with younger days and moving on to your multiple experiences. And I have actually thought about the whole thing of not how I as a coach learned to coach, but how other people chose to coach me. And that's how I learned without using the word. I mean, I didn't know the word coach till maybe some decades ago. And I have been very struck. I'm going to go back and forth between early days and late days because that makes it possible to put the markers of the journey rather than just go through linearly because the journeys are never linear. Late in my life, I became quite a fan of Swami Vivekananda, whom I didn't discover earlier for whatever reason. And when he went to Chicago in 1893, he was asked this question. We are all, by American businessmen, think of 1893 Chicago. We are all small businessmen. Can you tell us something simple which we can understand so that we can do our business better? Because the rest of what you're saying about Hinduism goes over our head. And he said 4 things. And I have, of course, paraphrased this from, and he was no MBA, he was no coach, he was no behavioral scientist. He was then saying this long before David McClellans were born. He said, just do 4 things. 1, be self-aware. And that reduces to the point you just made a little while ago about knowing yourself. The second thing that he said is serve others before you serve yourself. These are pretty self-explanatory. You can write a book on each, but I won't explain them. But I want to tell you these influences, even though I discovered this particular set of statements later. The third thing he said is protect your resources. There are resources that help you to do your business. And he outlined people, air, water, and soil. Long before ESG and all was known. And the last thing he said was, you have to take tough decisions, take it, but implement them with compassion. Now, I'm mentioning this, as I said, I learned about this rather late in my life and career, because then when I reflect back on things that have shaped me, I have been very struck that somebody who said something in these 4 arenas without intending to coach me ended up coaching me. And I came to a definition of coaching is influencing another person positively without any intention of influencing. A bit like a parent and a child. You don't spend your whole day planning a coaching strategy for your son or daughter. You just coach as you go along. And to me, that is the overarching part of what has influenced me is being coached without knowing I'm being coached and coaching others without knowing that I'm coaching them. And the marker of this is that many things that the coachee remembers, the coach doesn't remember at all as having happened. I mean, I can go through any number of examples of saying, do you remember, sir, that this happened back in 1975? And the guy says, yeah, something like that vaguely, but I don't quite remember. Whereas for you, it was like a bolt from the blue. And bolts from the blue change behavior. Knowledge doesn't change behavior. Bolts from the blue change behavior. You know, it's like putting a new embankment on a river that's flowing. So I also learned as I went along the difference between people who inspire you and people who instruct you. When I was young, I think like many of us, I'm not an exception, I was very inspired by people who could inspire. So I would listen to speeches, I would buy books on great speeches of people because they inspired me. And inspiration is important. It's not that inspiration is not important. But instruction is far more important because it leads to action. But nobody sits and instructs you. It's not like a guru shishya where the guru is instructing you to do something. The instruction happens by somebody in a way which he means well, he just tells you. And I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. The greatest instructor for me was my father. Like you said, your mother was a strong influence on you. And he's not famous. It's much more sexy to say I was influenced by a speech of Mahatma Gandhi, which I heard when I was 3 years old, assuming I remembered it in the first place. But the instruction is something which, when the turtle delivers its little brood, the mother turtle opens her mouth and collects the little babies into her jaw. And then an uninitiated person might look at it and think that this is cannibalism. The mother turtle is devouring her own child. But the turtle puts all of them in the lower jaw, slowly walks to the ocean or the river or whatever, opens her mouth and lets them out. And those start swimming and they become the next mother turtle. And this is the metaphor that stayed with me, saying the person who opened his or her jaw, let you occupy a little corner, protected you till you went to the water and learned to swim yourself, was an instructor. But did that person intend to instruct you? Not consciously. When I was packed off to work as a salesman in in the Hindustan Lever, the usual way, and I was chafing, BSc physics honors electronics engineers, going shop to shop, talking in Marathi and trying to explain why you should buy surf. The person I was sent to was a gentleman called Kelkar. And he told me on a Sunday, he says, tomorrow Sunday, what are you going to do? And I said, nothing, I'll sort of walk around the city a bit. He said, I'm going to the Ram Mandir, would you like to come with me? I'm taking my wife and going. I said, of course I'll come. And I went. And we went to the Ram Mandir on the banks of the Godavari. And like many temples, the entrance was low, so you put your head down and go. And he just said to me, do you know why Hindu temples have very low entrances? It's the kind of question you don't learn in an MBA. It's the kind of question that, frankly, I have been to many temples like both of you and many others. I never even thought about it. Just kept your head out of trouble. You walked in. So I said to Kelkar, no, I don't know. Maybe they didn't have enough wood or stone in those days. He says, no, it is a way of reminding you Namrata Dhar. And then we went to the temple, we did whatever, we came out. And when we finished, I said to Kelkar, listen, am I being arrogant because I'm 21, 22? I know I'm carrying on my shoulder my BSc physics and BTech honors. Uh, he said, no, no, you're not being arrogant, but you will become arrogant. I mean, here's a guy who's sort of 52, 53, telling a 22-year-old chap, in due course, you'll become arrogant. Right now, you're not arrogant. And that's not the reason I told you. I just told you because my father told me that temples have low ceilings so that you're always reminded to keep your namrata. And since you raised the question, I think when you're my age, if you can be namra, you'd be a great leader. So he made it almost like a, coaching. Now, many years later, I was the branch manager, and when I met him, I reminded him of this episode, and he said, I don't remember what the hell you're talking about. I couldn't have said all that. And that's what I mean by saying you instruct without intending to instruct, much like a father does to his child. And there are many, many, many such episodes which I can recount. And in the interest of time, I'll just mention a couple because I also had an experience where, this is just before Ram came to ETA factory as factory manager. I think Gurdeep Singh was factory manager at the time of the episode I'm narrating here. And Bipin Shah was my boss. And Bipin Shah was, as all of us know, three of us at least know, he was an unassuming kind of leader with a hugely sharp commercial sense. But there is no pizzazz about him, He wasn't walking around with a swagger. And so we were doing we put a spray dryer in ETA, we changed the packing lines. And then we had a launch conference to launch Anik spray or lever spray or something. And Bipin Shah, I said, what role would you like to play? He's a role salesman, okay? And he said, I don't have to play a role. This technical people have implemented things in the factory. As a marketing head, you're making some changes. I was at that time the marketing manager. They're your people. You're talking to them. I'll just come and be there. And I said, no, I mean, it's a launch conference, it's a big event, you must say something. He said, okay, I'll play it by ear, you go ahead. And boy, I remember, those jumping carousels we used to have in those days. We went to Lintas and made colorful slides. And between Gurdeep and myself and whoever, we gave them the full Monty. Okay? We almost gave them the impression that the dairy business of Hindustan Lever has been changed so dramatically, it's never before known in the history of mankind. Okay? Consumer research, technical research, etc. And then somebody said, what about the boss? Is he going to say something? Eric Schimmen, I think he was the vice chairman. You'll remember a name called Eric Schimmen. He said, yeah, Bipin should say something. And Bipin got up and said, whatever has to be explained to your head has been explained by Gurdeep and Gopal. I have nothing further to add because they got very good slides. I have no slides. But I want you to just think about this. That if you can just exert another half an hour every day and place another 10 packets of liver spray or Anik spray or Anik ghee, you can change the lives of 5,000 people who depend on this dairy to run. And I come to 5,000 because there are about 300-400 employees. They have families. Then there are milk vendors. He did some maths. And if 5,000 people depend on this dairy to run, and would you like to change the life of somebody? And he just changed the whole context in a very dramatic way. Again, an example where, of course, ETA was saved. It took 1 or 2 years, and Ram was there, I think, by then, when we declared our first profit. But that's not the point. That's the rational part of the whole exercise. The fact that Bipin chose to appeal to people's hearts, and Gurdeep and I, young and brash, 23, 25, whatever age we were at that time, were appealing to the head, taught me a second lesson. But Bipin had absolutely no recollection of this episode. When much later in years, he says, "Arey kya yaar, ghee bechna hai?" I said, "Ghee bech diya." Oh, kya hai? This matter-of-fact way of sharing an idea, which is combining heart and mind. To me, the lesson was that is the key to transformation of success. But we are so geared to artificial intelligence, natural intelligence, other forms of intelligence that we hammer the head with messages. So that's the second sort of example. And the third and the last example I just wish to mention is I grew up till the age of maybe 40 thinking leaders are not supposed to be vulnerable. Leaders are supposed to be supremely confident at all times. And I think I molded myself that way. I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious, but around 1987, I joined the board. I was the export director, and Ashok Ganguly was the chairman, as you will remember, RR. And I had a bad episode. Some fellow we recruited for garments exports took us for a ride, and we were minus $1 million. And I got a call from Muktesh Pant, who is in Dubai, saying, I've tried to trace through the banks. There are no documents. I think we have lost $1 million. And Ram Sundar, I think, was the, if I remember right, the financial controller or CFO of exports. I panicked. You know, it was a long time since my throat was dry. And here I was, I don't know, supremely confident, 41, 42, you're the bloody director of Hindustan Lever, you think the world is at your feet. I almost felt the same mirage that probably some presidents in foreign countries are looking at today, that everybody's sucking up to me and I'm doing everything right. And then this thing happens. And some instinct told me, prodded, I have to say, by my great friend and mentor, Bipin Shah, who said in his own very Gujarati way, you know, he said, Gopal, if you're in trouble, say you're in trouble. Huh? Somebody can help you. If you don't admit you're in trouble, who's going to help you? So you go straight to Ashok Ganguly and tell him. I said, I don't have an appointment. He said, barge in. So I went, I barged in. And of course, I must have looked the way nervous people look. And very soon, Ashok Ganguly said, sit down, talk to me, have a glass of water. And various things happened after that. The purpose of this narration is not to talk about the episode itself. Suffice it to say that we did lose $1 million, but I wasn't fired. And the whole company rose to support me. You know, Matthew Panikar in finance and M.K. Sharma in legal and various people who were running important operations. And the lesson that I took, which even today when I ask Ashok Ganguly, he says, yeah, I do remember there was some problem. But why do you ask? And I said, you know, at the time of great vulnerability, you supported me. He said, I don't know, I did. I was just being myself. Whatever that meant. So when you're yourself, when you don't have the intention to instruct somebody, when you're reacting to things in the emotion of the moment, then you end up coaching them. And for me, that was a great third lesson. I could go on and on, but I won't. I think I should stop somewhere. So the people who influenced me are not necessarily famous people, but they were very effective people. But some of them also gave me a very rough time. I mean, I don't want to give the impression they were all sugar and honey with me all the time. But that also depended on what it is that I had done or not done, as the case may be. And so the net result in my mind is, if you can behave and bring to the act of coaching the attitude that a parent brings. No parent attends a parenting class, coaching class, you know, yet your son or daughter grows up. You give them advice, they accept some, they don't accept others. You learn to live with it. And you become, at least we strive to become good parents. Whether our children think so or not can be a different subject. If the coachee has the habit of learning, and you, RR, just now spoke of a number of episodes where you were the hungry person who was looking for water, and a few drops of water came your way, whether it was from your mother or from Tarun Sheth or Ranjan Banerjee or whoever. That is the metaphor that I have in my head. When the learner is dying to learn, but the teacher is not dying to teach and instruct, but the teacher wants a contact and an atmosphere and to create a sauce in which there can be an exchange of molecules, you get the best coaching. And the test of the best coaching is whether after years together, the coachee remembers what happened. And the coach has forgotten, that's fine. Heaven knows how many people will have come and told me that, you had a great influence during those 3 years that I worked with you, but I can't remember a thing. And the same thing repeated again and again. And that's what happened to parents and children as well. So I love the metaphor of a parent and child in a good family, which is not sort of stressed with some other aspects. And if we could bring that into the whole system of coaching and mentoring, we would probably have a very good ecosystem. I've tried to produce the second half of the fruit because you spoke about your development as a coach and what you learned. And I have spoken about my development uh, as a coachee who's learning through I call it the emotional sauce of interaction. And I was lucky to be thrown into the sauce. I don't think I did anything particular. All of us in Hindustan Lever, to be fair, it's not just me, were thrown into that sauce. Some of us felt the sauce was too stiff, and some of us felt the sauce was too stuffy. But we learned. And I think if you can create and replicate that sort of atmosphere, you get the best coaching. I don't know what you feel, RR.
Before RR steps in, Gopal, I just want to say something about, like you said, the coachee remembers what the coaches don't, and some of my interaction with you guys, which probably you don't remember even a bit. But before that, two things. One is, if you remember when you came to the conference, Coacharya conference last year and spoke on spiritual intelligence, you said, I don't even know what the heck spiritual intelligence is. And you come here and speak about Vivekananda. So I wish I had known that, and I could have sort of triggered you or prompted you to speak more on that in terms of those wonderful words of wisdom and what you said. And the other is, like when you talk about the parent and child, there was a gentleman, a guy called Timothy Galway, who wrote books on inner games and so on and so forth, who I had the pleasure of meeting him and being trained by him. He always used to say that, did you ever give your child a manual for the child to be able to walk? The child walked by walking, looking at people, imitating them, parents, whoever it is, and they walk. And the substance of what he said was that people evolve by watching how you walk rather than how you talk. And that's exactly happens, I think, in coaching. It's not what you say. It's about the kind of impressions that you leave behind in the minds that influence people to, in some ways, be inspired by you. Coming back to the specifics of it, Ara, very often, I mean, I say this in many occasions, and sometimes not necessarily referring to you because I don't want to sort of bring too much attention to you. But I've said this openly, that you were the person who actually, in some ways, inspired me to become a coach, totally unknowingly and possibly serendipitously, when I reached out to you at a point in time when I was in a bit of a crisis. And so you have all these back, and I said I wasn't sure what I wanted to do really, because I had a very sort of frustrating experience in a spiritual journey, and I had worked with NGOs. I wasn't happy at all, and he said, "Why don't you become a coach?" At that time, I didn't even know what the heck a coach was. Like Gopal says, this is just about 15 years ago. And I don't know if you remember, we were walking in the park across your house, and we came back and breakfast at your house. And that was a conversation that I went back to Nina and told her that this is what RR tells me. He said, yeah, RR is very wise, but you are not. And you've done so many stupid things in your life. So before that, can you check what it is about before you start doing it? And eventually it became a métier in my life. And Gopal, again, this is something I don't want to go into too much of detail, but before I left Levers, after about 18 years of amazing experience there, and the conversation that I had with you as my boss, or at that time you had moved away from being my boss, and that sort of crystallized my decision that I would leave for good reasons, that this is what I want to do with my life, and this is not going to happen, perhaps, maybe I thought wrongly, and this happened. So you may not remember that, but the fact is, like you said, those words stay with you and influence you through your life. And that's really the contribution that a teacher, a coach, a mentor make. So, as a next phase in terms of people that you've mentored, helped, supported, I being one of them. What have been your value adds, and as well as what are your learnings? And then Gopal can follow after that.
Well, let me briefly respond to the specific personal reference that you made. And I just wanted to sort of share a couple of observations because I don't think I have shared this with you. One is, for a coach to be effective, one has also to go through life experiences, bit of annealing and hardening of a metal. Human beings also go through that process of uh, the internal chill, coupled with, over a period of time, my observation of you, Ram, as a person who is very courageous, who is able to call a spade a spade. And at the same time, I do remember the times when you were GTM Foods. I did observe many situations where you were also equally fought for fairness and equity. And that demonstrated your capacity to maintain a certain balance. And above all, with life's experiences and some of the spiritual encounters, so to speak, that you have experienced, I also sensed that there is a distilled set of wisdom that you have started exhibiting, because your ability to search for within, it's not about leadership in terms of tools and techniques from outside, but it is from within. All of this, plus the context, the time when the conversation happened, and there was the surge and the demand for people who have done it all, experienced lows and highs in their lives, and can also bring in their distilled wisdom. And from that context, it just occurred to me, probably you can call it as intuition, probably just a thought at the moment, so to speak. And I did share, not realizing that you will attach any importance to this. The conversation with me must have helped you to sort of crystallize and move forward. But I have nothing but admiration for the journey that you have undertaken all these last 10 plus years. So compliments to you. But coming back to some of the early experiences of coaching high quality top management, I thought the best way to describe to you about a couple of these experiences and share my stories with Gopal as well is to talk about some of the obstacles I encountered as a coach and what were my approaches. And of course, it's not that there was everything was so crystal clear. I think I responded as I learned. Now, here is a situation where a very senior guy in an Indian multinational identified as a potential managing director. And it was a matter of about 18 months when the current incumbent had to step down, and then it's a board managed listed entity, very high profile, very profitable. And the person that was actually shown to me and presented to me was highly performance driven, highly self opinionated, in a way, a pace setter. And that's the way I will describe. So those are his strengths. But the areas of concern that the organization shared with me, and of course I discovered through the conversation, demanding but intimidating, an extremely poor listener. I know, I tell you better go and do it. Extremely analytical, because his intellectual rigor and his critical thinking capabilities far excellent. However, very self-opinionated. And finally, unemotional. There is no curiosity about people. And that, I think, is the sort of challenge I encountered. So the brief I thought to myself was that how to preserve the strengths of this unique person while helping to become more self-aware and focus on the results, but at the same time help him to appreciate and understand the process of achieving the result. because he is very highly result oriented, but the process through people and teams. So I did realize that there was extraordinary support from the top management, chairman included, the current MD. And my previous experience in handling some superheroes and some amounting almost like tough and demanding types, the bully types, the alpha types. I think all of this, in fact, helped me to sort of start preparing myself to help this person. Very soon I discovered that his attitude was one of saying that, look, organization has decided to have a coach for me, but I'm still not very clear and sure. Let's not waste my time and obviously yours time. And I have been like this for the last 25 years, and I have seen successes with my style. So why should I actually change at this point of time? And I can tell you that I am unlikely to change my style. So typical of your friend RR, I would have been softy, touchy, persuasive, and all of that. But I think what coaching has also done is to make me toughened up a bit. And therefore, my response to him was that, yes, fine, you're busy, and we could certainly spend this time more productively. And let's not therefore waste the time if you are saying that you are unable to make any changes. And I packed up and I was about to walk out. And that helped me to appreciate and understand that one has to be very careful in trying to spot and look for traps which some of our coaches may present to us. So when that happened, he suddenly sort of got up and he said, look, please hold on. And I might have reacted like this, but let's actually talk about what is it that I could do to become a better version of myself. And then I thought to myself that in tackling such obstinate persons who are totally blind on another dimension of leadership, it's very important for us to really sort of look for data, fact-based, be analytical, play to his game, use the language that he is familiar. So the 360-degree assessment report was filed away. He didn't even take a look at it, cursory look, and he filed it away. That was about 6 months ago. I pulled it out and presented the analysis, including the qualitative comments in bar charts and other forms of visual presentation, because he is so bloody good at it. I'm not as good at it. But I thought that that is one way by which you can actually push him into looking at facts. That gave him the confidence that, look, I think it is important for me to look at this, which I have not paid sufficient attention. And I supplemented it with an interview-based 360. That data also got presented. And the verbatim feedback that I have received was delivered to him through competencies and themes. Therefore, he was also able to hook the feedback under some relevant headings, and that helped him also because he is a structured sort of a person. A degree of confrontation is very useful under these type of circumstances, as our coaches will be listening to this podcast and conversation. And I confronted him also with some very beautifully sort of summarized reflections of the people who worked with him. One said that he is brilliant, but he doesn't know about anything about people. Another one said that he is always right, and he has alienated us totally. We don't feel comfortable to have a conversation with him because always we believe very tentative and conditional. And to help him to transform and to change from being over assertive to one who is able to look at the other dimensions of leadership, involved 4 things. 1, a recognition that he needs to feel motivated and how to facilitate the inner motivational level of a coachee, the client. The second is the person must also be willing to practice some of the new behaviors and attitudes, because some of these are formed early on in your childhood. But the context has changed. So when he said to me that 25 years I am using the same style and I've got elevated, but today the context is that one derailer is going to be that if you can't carry his team, he can't be the CEO of a company. So there are meaningful consequences if you don't change, and that need to be called out. And the last couple of observations is that in trying to build this self-awareness, it is equally important for me to realize, and I did realize, that I need to challenge as well as support. Both these axes have to be, both these levers have to be pulled in the right direction. And that helped him to really gain a level of confidence from which the breakthrough became easier. So it took a lot of, say, about the first 8 to 10 hours, which is the first 3-4 sessions. But the breakthrough, the aha moment happened when he felt that, look, I can trust this guy. He has unconditional support in terms of transitioning into a new avatar. But equally, he was sensitive to mention to me that, look, I should, in the process of changing my behaviors and style, by accommodating others' points of view, by being more inclusive of others' views and ideas, by giving them a comfort that, look, I'm not obstinate and I'm inflexible. I also need to get feedback on a continuous basis from my own teammates. So at some point of time, after the 5th or 6th session, he invited me to say, look, why don't you actually spend time with me observing what I am doing with my team? So I said, oh, that means you wanted me to be a fly on the wall? If you permit me and give me the discretion also to listen to what feedback I'm going to give you with it. So I think the process of restoring confidence and reclaiming confidence within helped us to bring about the transformation. And I'm so happy to tell you at this point of time, in this group of industries, this gentleman is now standing out as one of the most successful CEOs of the company, who has harnessed outstanding capability for teamwork and team development. Because team working is one dimension, but how do you invest in the growth and development of people? And the chairman of this company is telling me, I happened to meet up with him about a couple of years ago, that look, one of the things as a byproduct of this coaching engagement that this man has learned is that he has started adopting the coaching style of leading his team, asking powerful questions, listening, observing, interpreting body language and facial expressions, and from an emotionless to an emotionful. And then combined with the strengths in terms of result orientation, strategic orientation, its ability to network, all of this, the company has actually grown year-on-year basis and have exceeded all the targets and goals. And they are flourishing now. They have become almost global because they are now operating in about 35 countries outside of the country. So that, I think, is an example that I thought would be of interest now. I'm sure that Gopal, listening to this, will have some comments to offer.
Over to you, Gopal.
And I become even a better and a great coach than what I am at the moment.
Ram, you said something like share your own sort of mentoring experiences and so on. And when I picked up again, I could sense that RR was doing that. And what I really want to say is the best mentoring experience is one which is not hierarchical. When a person thinks my coach is, you may be senior in age or experience or whatever, but when he thinks that he is beholden to you, and conversely the other person thinks then you get to talk up and talk down, and that doesn't work. And so I struggled for a long time until I had a particular experience which I wish to narrate. I was in Tata's, I was the director, and one of my responsibilities was for people management and HR. And a particular director of one of the companies showed promise, and we sent him off to Harvard. He went through various tests, experiences, and when he came back at the HR forum, he was narrating what he got out of it. It was what you might expect. He was saying nice things. Company had spent over $50,000. He was not going to rubbish it. But he said a particular episode, and his cohorts gave him feedback which said that he doesn't listen and he wants to plug his point of view. He's a very soft spoken guy, by the way, this particular individual. And then he went on to add, it was almost mirthful at the time it happened. He said, I was taken aback because I think I'm a very soft spoken person. I do not plug a point of view. And I'm so flexible that I was surprised to hear my cohorts say this to me. So when I came back, I narrated this to my wife. And here's the brilliant development. The wife apparently told him, your company is crazy. Why do you spend $50,000? If you had asked me, I would have told you this myself. So everybody started laughing. And then a little discussion, which it took its own sort of path. Are wives the best mentors for? It happened to be all men, so our spouses the best mentors. I don't want to make it gender specific, but since most of them happen to be men. And when I came back, I said to Geeta that, this is what happened. She said, I've been telling you for the last 15, 20 years, why don't you do A, B, and C? But you would rather spend Tata's $50,000 and go and conduct seminars and so on. And that reminded me of my golf coach who keeps telling me the same things again and again. Because knowledge doesn't lead to change in behavior. And leadership is about behavior, not about knowledge. So if you keep on absorbing the latest HBR article, you attend the latest Drucker forum, you attend the latest workshop, you come back with knowledge, you may feel excited, but that doesn't change behavior. Behavior is changed when you have learned and then you practice it. This many coaches don't understand. They said, okay, I understand. What you're saying is this. I'll bear it in mind. And then, like the proverbial dog's tail, because it's very, very tough to change. Guys who don't listen, don't listen. Guys who lift their head when they swing their golf club, just keep lifting their head. Even if they paid their golf coach through their nose, they keep lifting their head because they want to see the outcome of their brilliant stroke, which of course is usually very disappointing at the time it happens. So I have found that the best mentoring experiences come when somehow you can direct the conversation to say, what does your wife think of it? I'm not interfering in your personal matters, and then it comes tumbling right out. At least in my limited experiences, I undertake to coach somebody only after I get to know the person a bit and I have some degree of flexibility. So I don't go and, if somebody says, I got 10 top leaders, come for 6 months and coach them. For me, it's not a pack of sheep that you just sort of herd in every morning. I therefore use the word mentoring rather than coaching. Coaching, you're solving a particular problem. Gopalakrishnan is a good guy, but he loses his temper or he's rough in his words with people. Can you help him to improve? And it's like a batting coach or a bowling coach in cricket. You keep doing the same thing until the habit sets in, or try to correct that habit. So my experience has been that it is knowledge followed by practice, followed by doing it consistently. Part of it happens with age. Part of it happens with age. I think I was far more impetuous 35, 40 years ago than I am now. That's, I think, the passage of time experience. And that's true for all human beings. I don't think it's special for me. But part of it happens due to consciously adapting it. There are only two such experiences that I would mention, because I could go on and on. All of us at our age have had many. I felt completely at sea and vulnerable when I went as chairman of Unilever Arabia back in 1991. You remember the Kuwait action had just taken place. So if I today go to a youngster and say, would you go as chairman of Unilever in Gaza? And the guy didn't show great enthusiasm. You can imagine my mind state. Uh, the American forces had gone into Kuwait. Travel was difficult. I had no team, and I was starting from there. And amongst the people, the first person I recruited was the head of HR. And many people said, uh, have you lost your bearings? Get the head of technology, the head of manufacturing, marketing, finance. What do you mean by getting? And RR knows the person, Colin Davy. And uh, we had a good working relationship, let us put it this way. But I told him the terms of trade. I said, living in Jeddah is going to be tough, so can I meet your wife? Which I did, and we did some talking. And the second thing I said to him is, as the first time chairman, I'm likely to show a lot of flaws, of which I'm totally unaware. I need you to come along and tell me later on. But be constructive. Don't just come and say, that was a terrible show. Come and tell me how to improve it. Both of which I must say to his credit, Colin did very well. And some of the intercultural impetuosities, things that, I'll give you an example. They came and said that for this grade, we will give them a Land Rover. And you know, my reaction, very spontaneous, coming from India where we're used to ambassador cars and so on, a Land Rover was a mini truck, you know. It was not a premium car. Whereas every Brit died to own a Land Rover because that was his life's aim. I said, what are you going to give company vehicles? You're going to give a mini truck to people. And he was absolutely appalled that I should refer to a Land Rover as a mini truck. And then we had a little conversation, and I realized that while it might be my impression that it's a mini truck, it would hurt a lot of people to be told that it's a mini truck. And I'm giving very, very small examples because coaching is about making very major changes to very minor things. It is not about doing major things to major aspects. A lot of minor things become irritants. As in any spouse relationship, we know. It's another example. I was asked by the chairman of a particular company, a listed company, to say that whenever we take the decisions, the management doesn't carry it out. I said, that's very funny. Then, as I talked to the top leadership, the number of guys who are graying in their hair and 50 plus said, this is the first time somebody is sitting across the table and talking to me and asking, what do I do? Otherwise, it's come, slam, bang, out. You know, you're working. And when I went back to the chairman of that board, he said, you know, coming to think of it, I never thought of it that way. I just thought we are assigning tasks and we are taking decisions and moving ahead. Anyway, I won't go into the detail of it, but it's not different from a spouse who says, why don't you listen to my point of view? Instead of saying no, as many spouses do. At least I can plead guilty on that count. And I've learned over the years that even if I don't agree, I should listen. And the concept of what's an open mind, every leader thinks he's got an open mind. I was under the same illusion for decades. But I found that the difference between open ears and closed mind and open ears and open mind is a gulf apart. They are just not the same. So those are some of the things that I've had while mentoring. And I think, as RR referred a little while ago, listening, asking questions, exploring. And I've always seen this coaching as an exercise of a journey with a compass and not a map. Your managerial career trains you to explore journeys with a map. A map tells you if you walk 10 miles, you will reach a petrol pump. Another 20 miles, you will reach a cinema theater. And you turn left there and you'll reach something else because somebody else has been through that journey before. But a coaching experience is a unique experience. It's that individual in that circumstance. Just like every marriage is a unique experience, every act of bringing up a child is a unique experience. But if you have a compass, you hold it up periodically and say, am I approximately headed in the right direction, even if I'm not precisely heading in the right direction? So to me, the compass becomes a very, very important part of coaching. And I would love it, and it's been my experience, that if you can use this compass metaphor, people start to say, aha, I didn't think of it that way. We've always said, what's your map? What will you do? Tell me the steps. And then you draw some stage gate, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. That's a map. But if I say, I want to have a conversation with you and I won't do it for more than 6 months because after that it becomes pointless. The guys, and we look at the compass every month just to see which way we are heading. It has a dramatically better outcome. That's been my experience. And I thought since you gave me the opportunity, I would like to share that. I am very much in favor of the unstructured rather than the structure when it comes to mentoring. And I think that's what we're discussing. But if somebody says, this guy's got all the top qualities, but he's arrogant as hell, can you mend that? Then you're like a surgeon and you're going to not attack, you're going to address a problem with his liver or his heart. That's fine. You take the scalpel and deal with it. But mentoring is something which is far more subtle. So that's been my experience.
Thanks, Gopal. I mean, just before we get to the next thing, reacting to or responding to a few of the things like what RR first shared in terms of aggressive managers, very opinionated managers, alpha managers. And one of my mentors and now advisors on the board of Coacharya, Marshall, he was one of the guys who first started with it. He wrote this amazingly powerful book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And there, one of the key things that he talks about is really about the feedback, especially 360 feedback, of which he was one of the pioneers. And getting that to open up people, and which I've seen help in many ways. Another thing that Gopal talked about was about knowledge itself. Knowledge by itself is complete garbage unless it is really distilled in the crucible of reflection. And so in the Vedic wisdom, what's always said is it's Shravana Manana Nidhyasana, which is about sensing whatever you are reading, experiencing, whatever, reflecting upon it, and then practicing based on critical thinking as to what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that makes a huge difference. And in that, like Gopal, and I'm sure in your case as well, the wives have been phenomenally the greatest influences in all of us in one way or another. So moving to the last sort of phase in a way of this conversation is about, so in the future, seeing the changes that you are seeing around you, technology, generation gaps, and which have always been there in every generation, and other various conflicts that are happening around the world. How do you think of coaching, mentoring, all these kind of things are going to evolve in the face of robotics and artificial intelligence, where probably cognitively they are far superior? And just going back to your this thing about the compass, Gopal, one of the experiences that I've had is, I mean, J. Krishnamurti famously said, truth is a pathless land. So for me, coaching, in some senses, it's not even, you even lose your compass. There isn't a need for a compass. It's completely going unknowing with a certain energy field that you should be able to get there. So more and more, I see that with all artificial intelligence coming in, and they are very powerful, they are very generative. So a lot of the cognitive aspects of coaching, mentoring today can be, I've had conversations, and many of my senior colleagues have had conversations with chatbot, mastery level conversations. They are, believe you me, 80% of the time better than 80% of the people. So sure, but there is a great value for human beings to add value. What would that be?
From my perspective, Ram, A of AI is a problem because the coachee is a human. The coachee is a human being. And therefore, the contrast between artificial intelligence and human intelligence there is an incompatibility that we see. Having said that, coaching to my mind is world's most customized development solution. Whereas any form of technology intervention, which can enable coaching larger number of people to scale up coaching and make it available, loses out this unique proposition and advantage that an individual human being with his emotions, with his life experiences, with his beliefs and attitudes needs issues to be addressed in a very customized, individualized manner. So there is this challenge that we are going to see. When I look around and talk to people who are still pretty active as CHROs and global CHROs, I hear 2 or 3 things. One is, indeed, AI coach can help in personalized learning paths, creating personalized learning paths. AI as a tool can also help in matching coach-coachee alignments or mentor-mentee alignments. It can also help in scalability. For example, I know of quite a few people in Europe using Valence and Nadia as an AI coach. And the feedback that I have picked up was that not particularly effective because of the reasons which I have already mentioned. But at the same time, it seems to help some people that it is anonymized. So the anonymized process where I don't have to reveal my identity gives a certain level of comfort for some people. Therefore, they can latch on to the AI, the artificial AI coach inputs and feedback. It is mass based. In other words, large numbers can be taken into account when you try to scale up and address cost related consideration, because it's going to be far more cost effective. Culturally agnostic, and that's an interesting point. If you have more homogeneous group, then it is all the more important for you to look at how this is going to help multi-generational situations. And so these are some of the advantages that I find with the AI coach. But having said that, there is a democratization of development that is happening in most organizations. This old privileged coach-coachee engagement for a select few versus. And therefore, even Unilever has actually got rid of listing. During our time, you are very familiar with the listing process. Because everybody says that you can maximize potential in everyone. There is no categorization called this fellow is having no potential and someone else is having high potential. You can actually classify into less potential or low potential to high potential, but how do you sort of scale up the low potential to medium to high? Because that's fundamentally the philosophy behind democratization of development focuses across the organization. So from that point of view, it appears to me that there could be a level 1 and a level 2 sort of a coaching process that will evolve. Level 1 is generate, you require technology as an enabler, so it covers maximum number of people with lowest cost and expensive. And at the same time, selectively you support through coaching and mentoring, because mentoring is a larger concept. It includes coaching, but mentoring has a couple of other dimensions, which is about transferring your experience and perspectives, and more importantly, your wisdom. And secondly, also to be a role model in terms of the values that the person has demonstrated in the course of his or her journey in the organization. So therefore, it is a larger concept. So you can have one level for everybody, and at another level, you can also be selective. So both can coexist is a final point I wanted to offer for reflection.
Thanks a lot, RR. Gopal?
This point about AI, I'm at the risk of being considered by listeners of this podcast as the modern day Luddite. I'll state my views fairly clearly. AI is being hyped to a fault, to the detriment of AI. That's the point number one I want to make. It is not a panacea. Just when I began my career, as both of you know, I started as a computer engineer and writing code. And I was myself plugging the view in my youthful enthusiasm at that age for that computers will solve every problem that we have. How stupid I was, I realized, not only in respect of computers, but in many other matters, but I'll keep it to the subject we're discussing as I grew mature or older. Uh, so I'm generally of the view that AI is another tool which can help you to reduce the uncertainty by a few microns. But it will not take you across the inches and the feet or the meters that are ahead of you. Especially when it comes to matters like coaching, human development, as distinct from a design of a rocket to go to Mars, where it can be very substantial. So there's a rational part and there is the emotional part. I call the rational part the geologist skill, and I call the emotional part the astronomer's skill. And I have to leave for your viewers this idea of the geologist and the astronomer. Because if you give a geologist, you tell him to take his backpack and land up on Mars and says, use the tools of your trade and tell us, report back. The chances are he'll pull it out, he'll stick his spade into the ground and he will try to analyze, and he'll send back reports saying at 5 feet I found zinc and at 10 feet I found water. Because the training of a geologist, by the way, I include engineers in this, I include chartered accountants in this, I include lawyers in this. I'm just using the geologist as a less controversial metaphor. What is in this? That's the question that the geologist is dying to answer. Now, assume that you've also sent an astronomer with his backpack to the same journey. Well, the astronomer will look up to the sky and say, what is this all a part of? He's using his imagination to say, well, we are very far away, but I can see Mars, I can see Venus, I can see something else. It's a very different skill. The astronomer doesn't pull out sharp instruments. He pulls out things that make far things look clearer, closer, and wonders. And so there are two different skills that leaders require. To be in the first part of your career, you're rewarded for being a fantastic geologist. But by the time you reach a leadership position, 40, 45, whatever, you need to flip to the astronomer skill. And AI can help at the geologist level to say, you can improve in quantitative methods. This is like passing another exam or attending another course, getting some rating. But for a leader, and we are talking here of leadership coaching, it's the astronomer part. And I do believe that what happens in your career is that AI plus NI is assumed to be constant. Human intelligence, AI plus NI being natural intelligence, is equal to the sum total of human intelligence. And people focus on the AI part. I must learn better how to do DCF calculation. I must better learn to introduce how ROCE works. I must better learn to have capital expenditure control, blah, blah, blah. But when you come to the second part of your career, how do I get the best out of people, doesn't lend itself to rational analysis in AI. It lends itself more to the NI part. So I am not a great believer. And AI is full of biases. I mean, it's a product of a bias. You may reduce the bias if you have lots of data, but in human beings, you don't get lots of data. So I am a believer that coaching must focus on NI and must enhance people's NI. And anybody who's leaning on AI to help, God forbid his leadership. he'll be dead before it starts. Recently, I was asked by a journalist, do you think AI can help you to select better people? I said, the day you do that, it's like saying, I'll use AI to select my wife. God save your marriage. You might use AI to shortlist because you get, like TCS, for example, I don't know, they get 5 million applications, all of them presumably having similar qualifications, some BSc from some university in Andhra, Karnataka, etc., etc. So they may administer some tests and sort it out so that it's a more manageable number. But the last bit has to be NI. And if you want to enhance HI, and the formula changes, AI plus NI is no more constant. AI plus NI equals HI. HI is completely flexible and big. And the true leader is the one who stretches NI to enhance HI rather than rely on AI. I think I've given enough confusing thoughts, but I feel very passionately about this. And I tell people, for God's sake, don't adopt a walking stick when you're 35. Wait till you're 80 to get a walking stick. You don't need a walking stick. Just because the walking stick is elegant, don't look like the old English gentleman of the 19th century. Just be natural. So that's my input.
Thanks, Gopal. Thank you, really. I mean, you expanding on your metaphor in some ways, the geologist with his feet on Earth and the astronomer with his head in the skies. If you are able to sort of achieve both at the same time, feet on the
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
The head in the sky, that would be the ideal. The thing is that I'm tremendously fortunate today to talk to both of you who have been, at least for me personally, some of the greatest mentors that I've encountered in my life. And also coaches. The differentiation is probably very, very minor in many ways, but significant in certain ways as well. And as we have probably people like Marshall Goldsmith, Peter Hawkins, and Professor T.V. Rao, who are on advisory board, none of them is a qualified coach, but I think they are amongst the greatest coaches and mentors that I have again encountered. Is that the sad part of it is that many coaches today are focusing on what is called the competency models and frameworks and so on, and forgetting about the human part of it. And so everything becomes very cognitive, and that is tremendously limiting the whole value add of coaching in many ways. So we are trying to find out various means in terms of how can you expand it to something much more of a metadata. And the other thing, while you said AI has bias, AI has a collective bias, but unfortunately humans have very individual biases. So many people who go to AI go because that individual bias is removed. And I just want to end it on a bit of more a jocular kind of stuff. It's been pretty well established that autistic children, they prefer to talk to robots. They don't want to talk to human beings. And the moment they encounter a human being, they withdraw. And this has been proven time and again. But it's also now coming to light more and more that all of us, at whatever level of genius that we are, Mensons and so on, we are also on certain level in terms of the spectrum of autism and the wide range of spectrum of autism. So to some extent, I think many of us find comfort in using a medium like AI in getting our answers rather than going to somebody else and probably getting a feedback which is not that productive for us and so on. But it's been an amazingly powerful conversation. Thank you both extremely, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I hope at least partially you were able to get the same amount of excitement and enthusiasm and value that you got out of the conversation that I did. And we hope to be broadcasting it to a much larger audience in the very near future. Thank you, Gopal. Thank you, RR. Wonderful day ahead.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, RR.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to have this conversation. We need to have this conversation going forward, even outside of the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Totally. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot. It's been great fun connecting with both of you, long-time colleagues, friends. And for bringing out the light behind the darkness of RR Nair. And
Yeah.
in spite of the power collapsing, I think I managed to participate. So that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
You,
Okay.
you are
Thank
more
you.
in the light in spite of the power outage, but we will catch up again. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope this episode inspired you to reflect and grow. To learn more about Coacharya, visit coacharya.com. See you next time.